Have you ever thought about, like, DNAs as a code? I mean, it's kind of like the ultimate secret message, right?
Yeah.
And figuring out how it all works, well, that's like cracking the language of life itself.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And what's even crazier is we're not just learning to read it anymore.
Hmm.
We're actually getting to the point where we can write it, even design totally new sequences. Like, imagine composing new chapters in the book of life.
Whoa, okay. That sounds pretty sci-fi, but how is that even possible?
Well, it's all thanks to this incredible AI model called Evo2. You can kind of think of it as a Rosetta Stone for genetics, but like on a whole other level.
Okay, I'm intrigued, Evo 2. Is that like a computer program? A super smart algorithm? Help me wrap my head around it.
It's definitely a learning machine, and it's specifically built to understand all that information packed into DNA. And get this, it's the biggest one of its kind that's publicly available, which is a pretty big deal. It was developed by this team of rock star scientists from places like the Arc Institute, NVIDIA, and top universities all over the world.
Wow, that's a serious brain trust behind it. But what makes Evo 2 so special? Is it just because it's been fed, like, a ton of data?
It's not just about how much data it has, but also the variety. Evo 2 was trained on this thing called the Open Genomic 2 dataset, which is just mind-blowingly massive. We're talking 128,000 whole genomes and metagenomic samples. I mean, everything from humans to bacteria, archaea, even viruses are in there.
Hold up, all of that in one data set. That's like, I don't even know, trying to read every book on Earth at the same time or something.
It's huge. And because it learns from such a wide range of genomes, Evo 2 can pick out the things that connect all life and the unique quirks of each species. Imagine a language expert who can not only translate between languages, but also understands all the little dialects within each one. That's kind of what Evo 2 can do with DNA.
All right, I'm starting to get how powerful this thing is, but how does it actually work? Is it just a supercomputer crunching numbers nonstop?
Right. It definitely needs some serious computing power. Evo 2 uses a combination of techniques. It's like a super high-tech microscope that can scan millions of DNA letters at once and then zoom in on the important parts, the stuff that tells us how genes work and how life has evolved.
So it's got brains and brawn. And speaking of brawn, to train something this massive, they must have needed a server farm the size of a small country.
You're not far off. They used NVIDIA's DGX Super POD infrastructure. It's one of the most powerful supercomputing systems on the planet. We're talking thousands of GPU hours just churning through all that data. It's like analyzing the genetic code of a whole city's worth of people all at once.
Okay, my brain is officially fried. So we've got this AI monster trained on an insane amount of data. But what can it actually do? Like, what's the payoff?
That's where it gets really exciting. One of the most impressive things is it can predict what genetic variations do. You know how everyone has tiny differences in their DNA? Well, Evo 2 can look at those and tell you how they might affect your health.
So it's like a personalized fortune teller for your genes.
Kind of. In one study, it correctly predicted 37 variations in the BRCA1 gene that no one even knew about before. That gene's linked to breast cancer, so this could be a game changer for how we screen for diseases and tailor treatments.
Wow, that's incredible. So it can predict things, but can it do more?
Oh, way more. This is where it gets even wilder. Evo 2 can actually find key features in DNA all on its own. It's like it's figured out the basic rules of genetics just by analyzing all that data. Things like where genes start and stop, where the control switches are, even where viruses have snuck their own DNA in. It's crazy.
So it's not just repeating what it's seen, it's actually learning the language of life and applying it in new ways. That's amazing. But hold on, I thought we were talking about reading DNA. Now we're talking about writing it.
Exactly. And that's what makes Evo 2 so groundbreaking. It can actually create totally new DNA sequences with incredible accuracy and scale. We're not just copying and pasting, we're talking about designing genetic code from scratch.
Wait, are we talking about making life from scratch here?
Not quite from scratch, but it's getting close. Evo 2 can make sequences that have specific effects, like turning genes on or off. It's like writing a program for life itself.
This is blowing my mind. We can actually design DNA with specific functions. What are the possibilities?
The possibilities are pretty much endless. We could design microbes to do things like produce biofuels or even create new medicines by tweaking their genetic code.
Wow, the potential is huge. But with this much power, doesn't that raise some ethical red flags? I mean, if we can design life, where do we draw the line?
You're absolutely right. The folks who made Evo 2 are definitely aware of that. They've built in safeguards like checking new sequences against databases of harmful stuff and restricting certain features to prevent misuse. But it's a conversation we need to have as a society, no doubt.
It feels like something straight out of a movie. We're really entering a new era where we can understand and even manipulate life itself. It's mind-blowing and a little scary.
It is. But the fact that Evo 2 is open source and has user-friendly interfaces means it's not just for a select few. It has the potential to democratize these tools and give researchers everywhere access to them.
So it's not just a scientific breakthrough, it's a societal one, too. It's like giving everyone the chance to learn and speak the language of life.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so exciting. And speaking of breakthroughs, let's go back to that thing about Evo 2 simulating evolution. I'm curious, does that mean we could actually predict what evolution will do next? Like, could we use it to figure out what the next pandemic virus might look like or how climate change will affect different species?
Now that you mention it, that is a pretty mind-blowing thought. Could we really peek into the future of evolution like that?
It's not exactly a crystal ball, but it's a pretty powerful way to explore different possibilities. By tweaking things in the simulation, researchers can see how stuff like environmental changes or new diseases might drive evolution. It's like running virtual experiments to see what might happen down the road.
So we're not talking about predicting the future for sure,
Hmm.
but more about understanding the different paths evolution could take.
Exactly. And that's a huge leap forward in how we understand life. It's not just about looking at what happened in the past, it's about actively exploring what could happen in the future.
This is incredible.
Hmm.
But I have to admit, it raises some pretty big questions too. If we can model evolution and maybe even influence it, does that mean we're taking control of it? What happens to the natural order of things?
That's a deep question and one that we need to think about carefully. But at the end of the day, Evo 2 is just a tool. It helps us understand how life works. Whether or not we use that knowledge to mess with those processes is a choice we have to make as a society.
It all comes back to responsibility, right? Evo 2 has the potential to do so much good, but we need to use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to have open and honest conversations about this kind of stuff, not just between scientists, but with policymakers, ethicists, and everyday people. We need to make sure this technology is used to benefit everyone.
You know, we've been focusing a lot on how we can use Evo 2, but I'm also curious about the pure science side of things. What are we learning about the fundamentals of biology from this? Is it changing how we understand life itself?
It absolutely is. Evo 2 isn't just for engineering life, it's also a powerful way to look into its past and understand how it works. For example, scientists are using it to reconstruct ancestral genomes, basically like piecing together the family tree of life. We can trace back the evolutionary lines of different species to their common ancestors.
So it's helping us solve those age-old mysteries of how life branched out over millions of years.
Exactly. And it's giving us a much clearer picture of how different organisms are related and how life has become so incredibly diverse.
That's fascinating. I bet there are some other surprising discoveries hidden in all that data, too.
Oh, for sure. For instance, researchers are using Evo 2 to study extremophiles. You know, those organisms that can survive in crazy, harsh environments like deep-sea vents or volcanic hot springs. By looking at their genomes with Evo 2, we're starting to figure out how life adapts to those extreme conditions. That could be useful for all sorts of things, like developing drought-resistant crops or cleaning up pollution.
We're talking about unlocking the secrets of survival in the toughest environments imaginable. Could this even help us in the search for alien life?
It's definitely a possibility, though we're not quite there yet, but understanding how extremophiles work could have huge implications right here on Earth.
It's amazing how one tool, Evo 2, is opening so many doors in so many different fields. It's like a master key to the secrets of life.
And we're really just scratching the surface. The developers are already working on adding even more types of biological data, which means even more sophisticated models and insights down the line.
So we're going from reading the language of life to understanding its entire vocabulary, grammar, and even its poetry.
Exactly. And as we keep digging deeper, who knows what other amazing discoveries are out there? The possibilities are truly endless.
This is all so mind-boggling. I feel like we need a minute to just soak it all in. We've covered so much, from understanding how life works to potentially rewriting it.
We have, and there's still so much more to uncover. The impact of this technology is going to be massive, changing everything from healthcare and agriculture to our very understanding of life itself.
We've talked a lot about the amazing things Evo 2 can do, but we also need to remember the responsibility that comes with that kind of power.
Absolutely. This is a total game changer, and we need to be both excited and cautious about it. The choices we make now will shape the world of tomorrow.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about how far we've come in understanding like the core of what makes life tick. But you're right, we got to be cautious and think this through. Having the power to, actually change life itself, that comes with some serious responsibility.
For sure. We touched on the ethical side of things earlier, but I think it's super important to dig a little deeper into what this means for society as a whole. Like, if we can design life, who decides what gets designed? And how do we make sure that these advancements actually benefit everyone, not just a select few?
Those are some big questions. It's not just about the science itself. It's about the whole framework we build around it,
Yeah.
the social and ethical stuff too. We need to be ready for how these advancements could change everything, from healthcare and agriculture to the environment, even our understanding of what it means to be human.
You hit the nail on the head. It's complicated and there aren't any easy answers. But one thing's for sure, we need to be talking about this openly and honestly. We got to bring together scientists, policymakers, ethicists, and everyday people to figure out the guidelines and rules that make sure this tech is developed and used responsibly.
It's like we're exploring a whole new world. We're pioneers, right? And we need to chart a course that works for everyone. That means thinking about not just what's scientifically possible, but also how it will impact society, the economy, and the planet.
Totally agree. And one thing that's super important is making sure everyone has access to these advancements. Evo 2 being open source is awesome. It's a huge step toward making these tools available to researchers all over the world, but access alone isn't enough. We also need to invest in education and training so that people from all walks of life can understand and contribute to this field.
It's like giving everyone a set of really powerful tools, but we got to make sure they have the instruction manual too, and some safety guidelines. We need to make sure everyone has a chance to learn how to use these tools responsibly and effectively. We don't want a world where only a handful of people hold the keys to the language of life.
Exactly. And that education needs to start early. We should be showing kids how cool biology is and what AI can do, inspiring them to become the next generation of scientists and engineers, the ones who will shape this field in the future.
It's about giving everyone a chance to understand and speak the language of life, so we can create a future where these advancements benefit all of humanity. But let's face it, this kind of tech is going to change the economy too. What happens to all the industries that produce things like medicines and fuels if we can just engineer microbes to do it for us?
That's a good point, and it's something we need to be proactive about.
Yeah.
Some industries are going to be disrupted as this tech becomes more common, but disruption often leads to new opportunities, right? We need to be prepared to support workers in those changing industries and help new industries grow out of these advancements.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Harnessing the power of this tech for good while also making sure we're not causing harm. It's a tricky thing to get right, but it's super important.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
This is a huge turning point for humanity, and it's up to us to make sure we handle it the right way, both ethically and responsibly.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. We started with the basics of DNA, and now we're talking about a technology that could completely change the future. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Totally agree. It's an honor to be a part of this, to see how biology, AI, and human ingenuity are coming together. And this is just the beginning. Who knows what we'll discover in the years to come?
It's going to be an amazing ride, that's for sure. And for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has made you curious and left you thinking about all the big questions that come up when we explore the very essence of life.
Remember, the future isn't set in stone. We shape it through the choices we make, the actions we take, and the vision we share. So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those big questions.
Well, that's about it for our deep dive. We hope you found it as mind-blowing and thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.